Hi, welcome back to another edition of the Power BI Monthly Digest. This time, the second time we've met in the month of May. The earlier video that we did in May was actually for the April release, but now this is the official May release of the Power BI desktop. We're going to be looking at, again, some of the new features that have come out. There's some enhancements to things that we've seen already, and some other good stuff that we'll talk about as well. So, my name is Devin Knight, and I'm here with
Matt Peterson.
So we're excited to kind of jump in and really show you some of the great things that have come out. The first thing I think we'll talk about is the only preview feature I think this month, which is this idea called featured tables. So if you haven't heard of this yet, again, it is new, so you probably haven't. Featured tables are this idea that you can take a table or tables that are inside of your data model and mark them as a featured table. And by marking them as a featured table, it allows Excel, your traditional Excel tool, to now connect into Power BI data sets. And so the idea would be, let's say you have a customer table that has all of the details of your customers in your organization. You go to publish that to the Power BI service, and maybe you set it up as either a shared data set or as a certified data set. And once it's set up in that way, users that are in Excel can tap into those data sets. Maybe you're doing like a conference, and you had a booth at a conference, and you had customers that are walking up, and you wanted to be able to see of those customers that walked up and you scan their badges, you got a little Excel sheet of that information, and you want to be able to tie in the information you have from an Excel sheet to a data set that you have in Power BI.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I want to say, hey, I have this customer table in Power BI. I have this Excel sheet that has some information about my customers. I want to be able to pull in their phone number because it wasn't given to me here, but I do have it in Power BI, so I want to be able to tie the two things together. So this is a preview feature. It does require that you have the insider version of Excel. So there's going to be some things that we can't even show you here, but we're going to show you on the Power BI side what you would need to do to turn on a table to be a featured table. So Matt, let's go ahead and jump into it here.
Let's take a look.
We're going to jump over to your Power BI desktop. And from the Power BI desktop, we're going to be going to the model view. And really, any one of the tables that we have here, we can use as a test scenario. So let's say we select the geography table is fine. And then with that table selected, over on the properties of the table, you'll find there is a new option that wasn't there previously called featured table, or is featured table. And so by flipping that on or turning that on, that gives you the ability now to identify or mark this table to be featured in Excel. Now, you do have a couple things here that you would have to identify, like what's your row identifier, what's the key column used here. So that way it's able to easily map, this customer's email address, for instance, that showed up in your spreadsheet to a customer email address in your data model. So there's a couple things that you can do here to really set things up for success for you on here, but it's a really cool new feature that I'm excited to take a look at and use myself. Again, the next steps here is I would then publish this to the Power BI service, mark it as a certified or shared data set, and then inside of Excel, I would actually be able to connect to this data set from within inside the data tab in Excel. So a lot of cool things there that you have available to you within inside of the new feature table. The next thing that we're going to look at has to do with the filters pane, though, right?
Yep.
So yeah, go ahead, talk us through this one.
So the filters pane is here. All of your old reports, if you're using the old filter pane, have now been migrated with the new filter pane. So they've
been talking about that for months now.
Yeah, they've been giving us that warning. Make sure that it's going to work. And it, for the most part, I haven't heard anyone complain about it. I haven't seen any big bugs with it. So. Yeah. Reason it got pushed back was because of the COVID, so they said one more month, and now we're here.
Okay. And so not only have they released it, but they've added a small little feature that's actually a really nice feature.
They've added a really nice feature. This new feature, when we would put multiple filters on a page, every time you would make a selection, you would have to hit apply. Right. So if I have 3 filters on one page, apply, 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 and we all know that, especially like with the direct query, we're sending out all those queries over and over. Well, now we can make all of our selections at once and only do one query. So we have an apply, kind of like an apply all button, so to speak.
So the idea here is to reduce the number of queries that are going back and hitting against the database. If I can hit apply one time, and this is actually found under the query reduction part of Power BI as well, right?
Yes, and that's where you have to turn it on, which we'll show you in just a second. And plus, just a good usability thing. Less clicking is always a better thing to me. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, let's check it out.
All right. So first off, you're going to have to turn this on, and this is going to be found in your file. And we're going to go to our options and settings, and into our options. And like Devin had mentioned, we're going to come out here. This is going to be into our query reduction. So query reduction under your current file. And so you do have to turn this on for every single file that you load. This is not going to be a default because the default set right now is just instant. And this is a preview feature here, so you would turn this on if you want to see it. I'm going to click OK.
And by the way, that's a single select. You can't have like apply individuals and apply all. You gotta choose which one you want.
And it's going to be one throughout all of your pages for whatever report you're working with.
Gotcha.
So let's add some actual filters here, and we'll see how this works. So I don't have any filters on this page currently, so let me add in the calendar year here. So we'll put in our calendar year. And let's add another filter. Let's see, what else do we want? Let me put in, let's make this interesting. We're going to filter this down by how many number of cars people own. So, you know what, I'm going to put that into the filters on this page. I had the visual selected, so let me come back here. But let me put my number of cars back into filters on all pages. Let me go back to calendar year. And we're going to put that into the filters on all pages. And I'm going to collapse these so I can get one more in. So it looks nice and easy. And how about we do sales territory country? Okay. So sales territory country, which I believe should be this first hit right here. And we're going to put add data fields here. Oh, nope, that's my sales territory key. Let me make this bigger. Sales territory country. I'm going to add into data fields here. All right, so here's what we can do now. So I can go to calendar year and make my selections. Maybe I want to see, I'm going to go to basic filtering. I just want to see 1 year. I'm interested in 2007. So I'm going to uncollapse that now.
The key thing here to notice is as you're making these changes, no changes are happening on the report itself.
That is correct. Nothing is happening because I'm not hitting the apply button at this point. So let me make one more selection. So I've got number of cars owned. It's currently all. Let me change this to, let's say if they just have one car. So I've made a whole bunch of selections. And at this point, now if we look at the bottom of our filter pane, we have our apply button. Now before this was gray, so because there's no filters that were on the page that I had selected. But once I've selected one, I can hit that apply button at any time I want to. So now I click on apply, and we will see all of our data would now be filtered out by there. So there's something not good with one of these years doesn't have it in.
The cross-section of things you selected didn't happen.
Yeah, it didn't happen. But so that's showing you that, hey, you don't have any data where all these filters could apply.
Right.
So for now, I'm going to get, let me just get rid of, that one. So we have these two that applied it to. So that's the first thing that we can do. We apply all.
Very cool. Yeah, I like that. So it makes it a lot easier. You don't have to, like you said, constantly hit apply after each one of the visuals you have. All right, so the next thing we're going to look at is buttons, right? So they've made some changes with the buttons again. And make it a little easier to navigate to different drill throughs and things like that, right?
Yeah, and I think that we talked about it 2 months ago. They just introduced the buttons.
Right.
And with the buttons, you had the capability of doing a drill through with the button as well as some page navigation. And with this update, they've given us 2 new features with both of those buttons.
Okay.
We can do some formatting, conditional formatting based on what filter page to take you to. And we can also, what I think we talked about, is have the button change during the process so that somebody knows, hey, I can hit this button for an actual drill through page to happen. Because before it was kind of hard, not hard to tell, but I think there could have been some updates to it, which they've done.
Yeah. And so they made it so you can have things like if it's being hovered above or if it's selected, active, that sort of thing, right?
Yep, and if it's in disabled state, what does it look like? When it is enabled to be able to click, it can change over. And we're going to just do a quick little demo on that.
Cool.
All right, so here's how we do it. What we're going to do is we're going to put in a button, and I'm going to make this a blank button. And when we have this blank button up here, currently it just is a little shadow box over here. We don't see anything in it. Well, what we want to do is we want to change the way that this looks for different states. So I'm going to go over to button text. And if I turn button text to on, now let's just take a look. If I go to button text default state and I say, let's put in click me. So default state is going to say click me. Well, what we want is we want to change not the default state to start with. We're going to want to change the state of when it's not actually being able to be used.
Okay.
So in order to do that, let's actually say, well, how is this button going to work? Now, this is going to be, for our demo purposes, a drill through button. So I'm going to come over, turn the action on, and this back is going to be changed over to a drill through button. And my destination is going to be my details page.
Okay.
All right, so I've changed that. So now we've come back over here. Now if I look at Click Me, if you didn't realize, or that was very subtle, it kind of shaded out to light gray. And so what would happen is if I click United Kingdom, it says Click Me, right? So pretty obvious, but we can make it even more obvious for our user. So what I'm going to do, and that's what we would have done before this month. That's how it worked. But here's what we're going to do differently this time. So I'm going to put my button here. I'm going to come over to the button text. And now I'm going to change from default state to the disabled state. So now this is saying, well, what do you want them to see when we can't actually use this button? And so I'm going to say, well, this button is all about selecting a country. So I'm just going to say, select a country. All right. And I want the font color. Let's make it pinkish there. Text size will go up to 12. And as you see, nothing is happening, right? Well, that's because I currently have a country picked, right?
Right. So it's not disabled.
Yeah, so now if I unclick, now look what has happened to my button.
Select a.
It's gone to select a country, right? So now, and we can do more things with it, but we don't want to bore you with everything because you can go and you can change the outline of them. You can change the fill. The only thing I would always make sure to do is as you're changing it, each time it's going to be in the default state. So for your outline, make sure you would go down to disabled before you decide to make a new kind of outline color. All right, so when we do this, let's take a look. So I've got my disabled button. I've got Australia, and now it says Click Me. Now, obviously, you're going to make it look way cooler than what we just did, but we're going to show you the functionality of it. So I think it was a really nice, like I said, we thought what would be cool is the light bulb. And this works for images too, to where if you had like a light bulb image and then you could fill the background color with yellow or something.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. They're making nice little incremental steps to make things better here and there. So the next one's, I think, a pretty quick thing to show is the data connection into web pages, right? And so they've made some changes so now that it just changed the default view of it, right?
Yep.
So let's take a peek at that. Pretty quick one to show.
So if I go to get data and I just have a wiki page copied over, I'm just going to paste it in here. And what is different, and you really wouldn't even notice, like I wouldn't have noticed it right away, but if you're someone who uses the web pages to go out to a lot, it'd probably show up more on your radar. But right now, it's table view. That is the default selection, is table view. So what is happening, they're going through all the web page looking for any tables. I can click on them and see what the tables actually look like, and we can preview those out. Now, if you want to go to web view, you get to see the actual web, and you can still do your add table using examples, all right? But they've defaulted because I think they realized that tables are what they wanted to see more of, and so they just defaulted to have that as your first option.
Gotcha. All right, cool. So the next quick one here then is back to buttons again, right?
Yeah, back to buttons again. So the buttons, bookmarks are great, and a lot of people love bookmarks, but sometimes you just want a quick button for your end user to go, hey, click this to get to this page.
Right. So you're kind of building in some navigation you can have something like a slicer that has the names of your pages, be able to select the name of the page you want, then hit the button to actually execute jumping to that page kind of thing, right?
Yeah, because with the first release, it was just page navigation, and this button can only go to one page.
Yeah.
Now we can have it, like you said, conditionally formatted, so to speak, and take us to a specific page that we want.
Cool. I'd love to see this one.
Yeah, this one's pretty neat. A few things that we have to do first in order to get it to work. So obviously we're going to need a button, right? So I'm just going to go and make that real famous button of mine blank. And I'm going to call this button the go-to button. So I'm just coming over here doing some quick button text on here. Going to change it to the button text go to page. All right, so we have that set up. Now, obviously, this is a button. We got to give it some action. And the action that we're using for this is I've got my button selected, action on, coming down. This type of action, we've got that page navigation. And before today, or before this release, you wouldn't have had this destination with the conditional formatting here.
You could select it, but you couldn't select the format.
You just have 4 pages, or however many pages you have in there, that's all you would have had. And if I click down, see, we would have seen all this is what we would normally see. But now we're going to be able to pass in something else.
Okay.
So here's what we need to do in order for that. We're going to need to make a table with the names of our pages that we want it to go to.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go to home, and then I want to put in, I'm going to go to modeling because I need to put in a new table. So I clicked on new table, and this is just a really quick trick. And it's loading.
Oh, you want to do add data, don't you?
Oh, yeah, you know, I wanted to add data, so let me delete that. All right. So from here, we didn't want to go to here. I want to go to enter data.
There you go.
And I'm going to call this page navigation.
And so it's kind of important to remember the name of that column that you do here, right? Because you're going to have to pass that into an expression at some point, or into a variable. Not a variable, but an expression.
Yes, they have to be exactly case sensitive and everything. And so mine was nav1 and nav2 that I want to use. So now I'm going to click on load. It's going to load it up here. Now, in order for this to work, we're going to have to put that as a slicer. So once it loads up, I'm going to go into that new table that we just created. Let me get rid of my filter here. And this was just nickname table. And what I want is that page navigation as a slicer. So let me click slicer, page navigation. And then what I like to do with it to make it, you know, a little bit, I don't know, I guess whichever user-friendly way you want, I'm going to turn this into a drop-down. And so now I'm going to select nav1. Now, if I do that, nothing's going to happen right now because I still have not fixed my page button.
Okay.
So I've got to go to my page button because now I have something to pass into it. I'm going to go back to my page button, and now down in action, the destination, I'm not going to pick a static destination. I'm going to put in a dynamic destination here. And so this is going to open up our destination, format it based on what field. So this is from our new table that we created in our page navigation column in it. We're going to click OK. Now, if all has worked correctly, nav1, I'm going to click go to page. And yes, it worked. Success.
All right.
If I go back to the home page, let's just make sure. Let's go to nav2.
And you probably add something like a back button in there.
Yes,
like
we would
that.
add a back button for a bookmark or exactly.
Yeah.
So that's pretty neat.
Yeah, pretty short and sweet. And you could even make this look as if it's one interconnected thing here, right?
Yep, and we could get rid of the slicer header here of page navigation, and we could make it flow like a sentence, so to speak.
Well, while you're here, some people might have already noticed it anyways.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about this bottom left visual that has this nice little shadow box on it, huh?
Yeah, so this one already has a shadow box if you hadn't recognized it yet. But what we can now do is we can put shadows on boxes, which for some people is not going to mean much to them, but for others it might be kind of neat. So you're going to select your visual, you turn shadow on, and you've got some pretty cool things that you can do. You can change the color. So I'm going with it.
You like that hot pink today.
I do like that hot pink today. It's a hot day outside too. You can change that position to be outside or inside. So I'm going to keep it outside, and I'm going to put it on the bottom left. So let's see how that affects it.
Oh,
and so we got this shadow. So I was thinking, you know, for some people shadows might not be a big deal, but this could add a little bit of pizzazz to your report, like especially if you have your 4 separate corners and maybe you've got 4 rectangle kind of visuals up there, like bar charts, column charts. If you put the upper left, upper right on there, then, you know, it, you know, kind of makes a pop.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. There's all the small touches. There's some people that are really into the aesthetic. I know you're not.
No,
There's some people that are really into the
but
aesthetics of, you know, the report layout and the colors. I think those things are interesting myself, but
I'm never good at using them. That's the problem. I overuse them, so the less the better for me.
Sure, absolutely. Well, last month we talked about a new feature that was introduced. Really, I guess it was this month, but the April release had a new feature called change detection, right? And that feature was all around kind of determining when to refresh the page, and you can leverage it for that purpose. But there's been some additional changes to that as well, right?
Yeah, and so what it was is we could add a measure for a separate light query to do change detection, so not do the whole thing at once.
Right.
So we created a measure. We said if there's like I think we mentioned if there was a new count on the row for customer invoice numbers.
Yeah.
They would go, oh, data has refreshed, now let's go out and do the full refresh. But if not, like we don't really care about everything else.
Right.
So when we did it, we couldn't really show like how it worked because the only way to see how it worked, well, there's 2 things why we couldn't show how it works. One, you got to have a premium account.
Yep.
And 2, you couldn't see it in the desktop.
Right.
Well, now that's what they've done differently this month. Now you can actually, as long as you got your premium, you can
Premium's still there.
Premium's still there. But now you can actually preview it in the desktop. And again, remember, this is only for direct queries.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, let's take a peek at it real quickly. I don't think it'll be a lot to show, but...
No, not too much to show. Yeah, so in order to do this, where you're going to go to is your modeling. And again, you would click on Change Detection. and you'd have to have a direct query, which we don't have pulled up here. And it's as simple as that. You
Yeah,
model
that's
it.
really what
I
it
mean,
shows.
really is that simple. You go to change detection, and then you'd go back to our old video to see how you put that measure in.
Yeah,
and
we
then
really
you
highlighted it more in the last monthly digest.
Yeah.
We showed how you could set it up, and then you can wire it up to change the page refresh settings of the page that you're looking at.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're a neat capability. If you give a perfect example, let's look at the distinct number of orders or something like that. When we see that change, then that initiates or tells us that we need to refresh the page.
Yeah.
The other thing I know that was mentioned was it is now integrated into some of the performance analyzer, so you can see the details of that as it executes as well and kind of know what's going on behind the scenes as well.
I mean, you can see what DAX functions are being analyzed and everything. It's pretty neat.
Yeah. Well, cool. So I think the last real hands-on thing to show is the changes to the Decomp tree.
Yeah.
So Decomp tree, I know is one of my past loves and a previous tool. Some folks might have used it in a tool called Performance Point from a long time ago. It was one of my favorite features of that tool. They've brought it over to Power BI for a few months now, and as one of the new AI visuals. But they've made some additions to really make it be much more interactive than it was in the past, right?
They're giving it full capability of all the other visuals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's take a peek.
All right. So for the decomp tree now, what we can see here is we've got this decomp tree. I've got some other visuals pulled up, and with this, there's a few things. One, they've added the drill through capability on this, and previously it wasn't there. So if I do a right click, because I got a drill through page based on year, and I can go and drill through and click on year drill through, and now we have the drill through just take me to my drill through page based on our decomp tree.
Nice.
So that is one thing that we can do. Another thing that we can do is we have conditional formatting now with our drill throughs. So I've got my decomp tree selected. I'm going to come over here to the formatting, and I have conditional formatting. And right now, I'm going to change my data bar colors, and I'm going to click on Advanced Controls. And I'm going to conditional format this based on another measure. So for this one is dealing with profit. So another thing that we like to talk about instead of just profit is in terms of, I don't know, like the profit margin.
Sure.
Because profit's great, but profit margin also tells another story of like how much money we're really making off of that. So I'm going to go to profit margin. So that's a measure I've already created. I'm going to change this into a diverging, and I'll go 0.40.
So while you're displaying sales amount, you can still have your data bars kind of be impacted or displaying based on another measure altogether here.
Exactly. Yeah. So I click on OK, and now we can see. So we can see that it looks like, for the most part, the more profit that we're making, the higher the profit margin was. And that's usually the case, but that's not always the case.
Yeah, 2008, there's perhaps a lower profit margin, even though it was more revenue.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you can conditional format based off of anything you want. It's nice how we see how things are connected from one to the next. Mm-hmm. If I click on 2006, we now have cross-filtering capabilities.
Ooh.
So now the decomp tree will cross-filter our other visuals, as long as we enable that with our edit interactions. And we can do multi-filtering as well. So if I'm over here, sales amount, I can click on here, and we'll filter backwards as well.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, and then there's a few other capabilities that they now have. Some have been there already, but they just highlighted again. You can sort your decomp tree alphabetically. You can sort it by that measure. So if we wanted to sort it by the profit margin measure, we could do that as well.
Very cool. So I know there was a few other other things. We usually don't get into each individual new data connector that's released, but there was a slew of new data connectors. I definitely would encourage you to look at the blog by the Power BI team to look at some of those details. There was also an update to data flows. That data connector now has the ability to do direct query, which is great. We do have a data flows class in case you're curious to learn more about data flows. But outside that was it for this month, I believe.
Pretty much it. Yeah. Nothing else. I think that was, decomp tree, your page navigation, and the new kind of drill throughs with those buttons.
Well, as always, we appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you like this video, subscribe, so you can continue to get more information from us. If you would like to learn more in depth about Power BI, perhaps more about data flows, we do have additional training classes on that. Take a look at our website at pragmaticworks.com to see how you might be able to subscribe. We have both free and paid training. The paid training obviously is more in depth than some of our free training that we have, but we'd love to be able to connect with you in other ways. And we're curious, what was your favorite feature? Go ahead and comment below. Let us know what your favorite feature was, and and maybe why was maybe your more interesting feature that you liked, and maybe we do a separate video on them individually if it's something that looks like it's interesting to you.
Yeah, go more advanced into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again for joining us for this May edition of the Power BI Monthly Digest. I'm here with
Matt Peters.
And I'm Devin Knight.
Still without a haircut.
Look forward to talking to you again in June. Take care.